Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of TEV, where we represent truth, entertainment, and value. Today I'm here with my brother Chris, and we have some exciting things to talk about today. Something that transcends what we been going through as a country, nation, a people, and I hope this conversation you can find truth in it. You can find some entertainment in it, not a lot of entertainment, but and hopefully, obviously, you can find some value in it. Chris, could you just kind of, well, before we get into it, let's talk about the word of the day. That's the most important thing before any episode that we do. Just tell us what that word is today, man.
Today, our word of the day is pacify.
Pacify.
Pacify is our word of the day today.
Could you give them a brief little definition?
Yeah, so
We normally don't do it.
Yeah, we normally don't do it, but we get a little extra sauce today. You know, when you pacify something, you're appeasing somebody. You're looking to kind of soothe anger or some agitation that you've caused.
Yes, and depending on how you view this, the talking point of the day, you may see some of these things as a pacification. Some of these things that have been pacified in the past or currently, or you may even see futuristically. But anyway, we have, like I said, we have some interesting things to talk about. We have some questions to pose, just to throw out there, and me and Chris are going to talk about it today. But Chris, tell us what are we talking about today? Why are we here, man?
Yeah, well, in lieu of the Nashville Covenant School shooting, the three representatives of the Democratic Party from Nashville County, including Justin Pearson, created a protest on the floor, which was not received well by the House itself, and were subsequently suspended. Ever since then, Justin Pearson has arrived on a couple media platforms trying to explain his case and garner traction for his movement, the justice movement, which we find ourselves now unpacking the Breakfast Club interview that Justin Pearson recently conducted.
Yes. So Justin Pearson, he was on the Breakfast Club show with Charlemagne, and who else was on there?
DJ Envy.
And I think Tez was on this one.
Mm-hmm.
And they was having a conversation that was pretty interesting. Obviously, it was about the policies for gun reform,
yep.
And stuff of that nature. But also they talked about some aspects of race that I thought was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like Justin Pearson, he did a good job of relaying that information. He had some pretty good talking points that I found was interesting, and I feel like that we could critique or unpack them furthermore to dive a little bit deeper in this conversation of just race and politics and all that, in one episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very helpful to have a black politician, obviously a young black politician, on a platform like the Breakfast Club, where, they're entertainers, but they are asking, real questions. They're prodding at things that we, the constituents want to know from our black politicians, which I think is, very insightful for us to get into the minds of the people who represent us, especially if they're from the same creed or color as us. But that does raise an interesting question of the expectations of black politicians from black people. Should black politicians, do you think, bear the weight of black people, especially ones in their constituency, or are they supposed to be universal representatives of all the people in their constituency?
So when I was watching the podcast, The Breakfast Club, Pearson made it very known and very clear that he represented the 86th district of Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
He said it, he referenced Memphis, Millington, Shelby, Forest, and Harbortown. So we already know that those are, different, I would assume, counties or towns within his district. But also Tez, the lady that was interviewing him or questioning him during the Breakfast Club, also mentioned that it was like 60% black or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, and you brought this point up from previous conversation about when you're a public servant, your job is to serve your community, right? So it's a dicey one because his community is like 60% black. So
And it's also subjective of
yeah,
who you believe your community is, and that may differ from who it actually is. And that's, I guess, the disconnect of what we expect from our black politicians versus what reality is for them a lot of times.
so I mean, and also to that point, I think it's different if okay. So what the public servant does have to their advantage or whatnot is the fact that they have the ability to be visionaries. So the fact that he's in a position of power and influence, he has the power to change policies or implement policies to benefit the community. The future for him could look different than the future of the community. So like if he wants a community that, let's say he wants to diversify the community to where it's no longer 60% black, he wants to like invite people, other ethnicities, other races to become a part of a project. I'm just making up something.
Yeah.
But become part of a project or that vision that he sees to make the community better. You know what I'm saying? Like to where it would benefit,
a larger span of people.
Yeah. But to answer the question, should black politicians bear the weight of all black people when it comes to making policies? I think it's already incorporated in that, like in the job description. So I'm probably more from the standpoint that he already bears the weight in.
By default,
Yeah.
I understand that. I think there is an expectation from what I would see the black community at large of having some responsibility as a black politician to implement things, especially in your own community, not at a federal level, but at a community state level, to implement some things that are focused on that ethnicity. So I don't necessarily see that as something that's too far fetched for a politician to understand. I do think there's a disconnect if our politicians, as Justin Pearson kind of stated, that he's not viewing it like that, and the expectation is that we are expecting that as a black constituency to see black reform. Now, if we're not seeing eye to eye, I think that kind of puts the support of black people for black politicians in jeopardy. Which again, I think Justin Pearson kind of spoke to when he said that the large percentage of people at his rally were white people within his district. Which again, like you said, 60% of that district being black is a misrepresentation of who is actually there and who his constituency is. So, I think that disconnect on the expectation kind of diminishes the support that black people actually have for their politicians, especially in their communities.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The fact that although the community is 60% black, but the percentage of people that are actually coming out to support him may look different. Therefore, it could alter his plans in a sense to cater to the people that are actually possibly going to vote for him. I don't know all the statistics, so I mean I'm just saying, hypothetically, if those are the people that are just as active as they are in their voting and they're just as active in their protesting.
That's a good gauge, I would say.
Yeah. Then yes, I think for someone like him, that is pro-black. He in the podcast, well, not podcast, but
their morning show.
Yeah, the morning show. He talks about he wear dashiki and had the old afro.
Yep.
So I mean, it's very interesting to see and to see it unfold going forth. whether he's going to get reinstated or whatnot, whatever that's going to look like. But it's very interesting how someone in his position has to navigate um, in those terrains, in those communities, especially where, um, in it, especially in a community where the statistics goes against the national population, where obviously white people are, the dominant race in terms of numbers, not the white power or
Yeah.
white supremacy thing that people talk about, but just in numbers.
Yeah.
But I think this is
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you talk about it's difficult for him to navigate, he's, likely at these rallies where there's, a large white turnout and maybe not the largest or most representative black turnout. He's engaging with, the ground level. And if it's not particularly representative of the black community or black, needs or black reform at large, then it's kind of not useful for black people for him to serve black people, I guess you could say. So I guess that, kind of leads us to a deeper question of why is black support, or why, at times our black support for our black leaders, why is that such a difficult thing for us to show?
That's well, okay. I think it's hard for black people to get behind black people because for this is just me talking. This is not necessarily true, but I think there is like it's like I don't want to say like a jealousy type thing, but it's like I think I don't know.
I think I'm kind of understanding where you're leaning.
Yeah.
There's a stigma, I guess you would say, to what it takes to be a politician. There's kind of already a reputation, regardless of race. The type of person a politician may be, and then when you add blackness on top of that, you could understand where the phoniness, the fakeness of a politician kind of gets exalted to a whole different level.
Gotcha.
When it comes to relating to the common black man or common black woman. So I could see, I don't know if it would be a jealous, but just a weariness, a questioning of intention, and again, that goes to the point of, do I just want black support, or do I want to make change for black people? And if it's not looking like I want to make change for black people, I'm going to assume as a black constituent that you just want my support, you just want my vote. And that can be difficult to, kind of understand as a black constituent. I'm voting for you, and I'm not seeing what I want to see. Why would I come out and support you? Why would I come to your rallies? Why would I come to your protests, right? So I think that's, that disconnect of, one, the stigma behind what it means to be a black politician, to shake hands with people who may have a different view from you. You have to navigate a lot as a politician, we understand. But I think there's an added phoniness, quote unquote, that you could say is attributed to, black politicians.
You bring up a interesting point in that you said something like shake hands with other politicians, and we know that majority of politicians are, white or other, and like to visually see someone like, shake hands or have a conversation about certain policies that that majority of black people probably wouldn't agree with. I think that could raise some, questions. A person could question where they're coming from. Like, are they for me? Are they against me? Are they, if I vote for this person, would it be a waste of my time? Are they really gonna, infect change on my current situation? And I think that's a hard place. Not saying this strictly for like people like Justin Pearson, but people in that arena, I think it's hard for them to also acknowledge, what people in the community, that are black, are going through, and then also, you know, not cater in a sense, but be aware of what the people that they working with, their constituents and things of that nature, like to kind of find common ground. But I think the problem is a lot of times these politicians do not find common ground. It's a matter of like, okay, so it's like one or two things. It's either I can concede to what is already going on, or like we saw in the when Justin Pearson got removed, I want to do something that goes against the grain in hopes that the voices of the people that I really care about are heard. So I think that's where most of these black politicians find themselves in, and it's a matter of how much do they want to tether on that line.
Yeah, I mean, I think of what you said earlier about, just the fact that we even have to acknowledge the fact that Justin Pearson wore a dashiki to his, I guess you could call it inauguration, or the fact that he has an afro on his head, or the fact that, Justin Jones is a black man with curly hair that has a man bun. Like, these are things that we actively acknowledge. Or that President Obama has to make known that he listens to rap music or stuff like that. Like, I feel like they understand, the black politicians understand the space that they're in, and they attempt, I guess, to connect with, like I said, the black constituent. But I don't think that's always received well. Yeah, and I think that just comes off as not sincere, unfortunately.
It's a lot of pacifying, if you will. I just had to throw it in there.
Yeah,
we ain't say the word of the day yet.
Yeah, we had to get that in there.
I just had to throw it in there.
Well,
I think these politicians have to pacify a lot to certain issues.
I'd agree.
Yeah, they trying to pacify the community. They're trying to pacify their constituents, and even trying to pacify their own name. It's a lot of pacification, a lot of things to balance.
I'd agree. I mean, I think being a politician is a difficult job, and all of the relationships you have to uphold. Again, like you said, you have to shake hands with people who you vehemently disagree with. So they're in a being pulled kind of at all spaces. So we ask that they work together, figure this out.
But we must move on.
Yeah. I mean, I guess a different way to think about this is when you have these black politicians who aren't particularly, I guess, getting things done for black people, and that's the expectation of the black constituent. Who does the black constituency look to get things done for them? Does that now in turn look like the other minority race that we elect, or the white person that we elect in power now? If the black constituent, if the black voter is feeling like they're not being represented by the black politician, what's next for them?
So I think to our earlier question, to the previous question, I think now this is just me talking again. This is nothing to take seriously.
There's a lot of that this podcast.
But I wonder, just from the history of it all, with slavery and and all that, I wonder if there's some type of thing just ingrained that's like, or not ingrained like innate or anything, but just like subconsciously taught to like view white people here when we shouldn't put them there, right?
Yeah, I guess like there's no distinction, quote unquote, between white people and black people, or any race of that matter. But I guess there's I guess what you call a white savior complex,
Yes.
in a sense, to where there's a pedestal placed on the achievement or outcome potential of what a white person may be able to do versus that of a black person.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that comes into play with politics. I think black people in power in any form. Again, there's a question of how that was achieved and what the outcome will be. And I don't think that that's done with white people, especially by black people. Um, yeah, that's something that's not questioned. It's kind of just understood that this white person will produce versus the black person has to prove themselves to produce. And then even then, they may still be in question by the black constituency, the black population, the black community at large.
Well, I think from a historical standpoint of just politicians in this country, so like for example, like we only have one set of data to look at for black presidents, right? Like there's not a lot of history and a lot of data that we can go back to and be like, okay, what what has a black president has done for this country for me to put my trust into future black presidents and things of that nature. And even just like other categories of power in our government and things of that nature. So that's like one standpoint. And then another is like, so on the other hand, you have a huge data set of white presidents and just white people in power that we can go to and be like, okay, this president was trash. This president was good. This president, he was okay. He falls somewhere in the middle. And I think the next person that just has so happen to be white, I think it'll be easier to pinpoint where they stand, for people, and more so, pertaining to the question for black people, they'll find something that's familiar, and it's just uncommon and not familiar to see a black person in those positions of power. So that's kind of how I look at it in a sense. But
I mean, I think it's interesting when you look at. I use for a data point, I guess, former President Trump's campaign and presidency. I guess what you would call a lot of grassroots individuals kind of felt represented for the first time in politics, especially in this modern era, by President Trump, who I guess you could say was a little bit more risque in the things that he said, more entertaining than I think a lot of politicians are or have been up until this point, to where he kind of connected with the common man a little bit more. And obviously just due to political idealizations and the racial histories behind those, a lot of those people who connected with him or understood him were white individuals. But I think it's interesting to see like the uproar and the mass support, the kind of cult following that he's garnered in doing that. And you have to wonder if that same thing can be achieved on a black side. If former President Obama were to, run on a quote unquote black platform, would there be overwhelming support for him, one by black people and then two by all people? Is that something that is even possible? Yeah, I think that's an interesting dynamic of what that looks like for a white president or a white candidate and their white constituency versus a black candidate or black politician and their constituency.
Yeah, I want to go back to your talking point of the white savior complex. Now I want to kind of unpack that a little bit more, only because now what I said previously, about the data and all that stuff. I kind of want to unpack that furthermore. But I don't think it's a matter of I don't think we need to use that term in a sense to classify someone that can actually create change or create or have an impact on certain situations. Um, because the truth of the matter is, from my standpoint, if a white person running for office or something of that nature is talking in a way that they have talking points that I agree with, or they're coming with policies that they're trying to implement that I'm like, okay, I like that. I can get behind that. Then why wouldn't I support that? Or, but in the same note, and I said this in conversations beforehand. Um, you know, the skin color is not strong enough in a sense for me to get behind every single thing and support every single thing that a person, you know, brings up.
I think I'm not saying that's just you, but I think there's a cultural dynamic at play to where a lot of black people feel, especially if the ideologies align.
Mm.
If there's a black Democrat, a lot of black people feel the need to automatically align themselves with that. I'm not here to say that's right or wrong, but I do think that is a trend. Obviously, we saw it with President Obama. Um, so I think maybe if more people were in the mindset of what you just spoke to, they might see the change they want actualized more. That may be a little risque for me to say. But yeah, I think there's there's a dissonance of what is wanted versus reality and expectation of that reality.
To interject, it was this question that when I was taking a AFAM class, African American Studies, one of the main questions was, should only black people teach AFAM, right? And of course I had to say something on it, but my stance was, as long as the information or whatever is being told, whatever historical reference, whatever historical point that they're trying to make, as long as they don't disrespect it, as long as they're telling the truth, as long as they're being, that I can see that it's passionate, they're passionate about it, they're genuine about what they're talking about, I can mess with that. But I do see the standpoint that, okay, it would be ideal for a black person to teach AFAM or African American Studies, but I would still hold them to that same standard of, as long as they present the information correctly, they're being historically accurate, they bringing their points forward, they're presenting them respectfully, they're genuine and they're passionate. The character and the characteristics of that still, that doesn't change no matter if you're white. Like, so I kind of relate that to, I kind of relate the teacher, the teacher question about who should teach to who should people look to for, like, political change, political impact, to bring that would benefit the community.
Yeah,
right?
But I'll play devil's advocate here. I think the understanding or the assumption that you're one of us, you understand our plight, you understand what we've been through, you've probably gone through it as well. Who better to address that than you? The black politician, the black CEO, whoever it may be. And I think that's when you get into, quote unquote, a white savior complex, when you feel that black politician to be unfit to do that, or just not capable of doing that, or just not willing to do that. And then you, due to your own assumption or your own expectation, you seek out somebody else. And again, not that that's good or bad, but you could view that as demeaning to the black politician, again, just based off of differences in what we view to be right or wrong, or what we view to be our objectives, our goals. So I mean, you would like to live in a world where, the race is not acknowledged, but unfortunately, the world that we live in is very race driven. There's a lot of structure in society just based off of how we look and who we are. So those cannot be avoided. You know, you see a black politician and you're gonna assume that they understand you kind of a little bit more than
At least
a white
you would
politician.
hope.
You would
hope.
but I mean, yeah, that's the thing. You know, and that's where you understand the necessity or the desire for.
Right. So like, to your point. So like, for example, Ben Carson. Do you think he do you think he related to the majority of blacks in America? For in hindsight, he did not because he didn't win. But I think that's a valid.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I think the unexpected answer would be yes. But I think the ideology that he aligned himself with probably, deterred a lot of black people from supporting him just off of that. But if you're speaking to experience, as a black man, he's definitely experienced, some similar things to you and I and every other black person in America. So I would say that, yeah.
But I don't think so, because it's deeper. It's deeper than just okay. So yes, he may have experienced a lot of things, especially in the field of being a doctor and healthcare and stuff like that. And I don't know what his upbringing was when he was getting certified or getting his doctorates or whatnot. But just from the standpoint that he was Republican alone, I think that diminished a lot of his support, because the majority of black people do vote Democrat, and the fact that another black person, and this alludes to my other point earlier, that skin color alone is not strong enough for me to connect to another person, because he was Republican, like he's a black dude. And he didn't garner that much support from black people. I don't have the statistics, but I guarantee if I were to pull him up, he did not. But you take someone like, and this refers back to the point about data, about having enough data to actually unpack this furthermore. But you look at somebody like Barack Obama, who ran Democratic. That was the largest turnout of black people in history to vote for a person. And I would have to, if I had to find a common denominator, that would have to be the fact that he was Democratic. Now let him be Republican or something like that, and talk against a lot of what black people are for. Yeah, I don't think Barack Obama would have been president. Now that's a stretch, because history has been spoken for.
I agree with that.
But I don't know. I mean, Barack Obama is a charismatic guy. Like, I think a lot of people like Barack Obama. Then again, a lot of people don't like him. But I think there's more people that like Barack Obama than hate him. If that makes sense. But yeah, I think that's just what it is right now. I think it's more than just skin. Just skin in the game, if you will. That plays a part in the black community's outlook on potential candidates for presidential elections or whatever. And even like Vice President Harris, she's a Democratic. She obviously Democratic.
Party.
And if she was Republican, I doubt if she would have won. Just saying, like, if she was speaking about Republican views and things of that nature, I don't know if she would have won. But the fact that she is Democratic and majority of black people are Democratic, and there's a certain ideology behind that, and I would even go as far as to say as a culture behind that. I think it's a culture that black people.
Yeah, that's what I was speaking to. I guess it's a skewed support, because it's definitely not like automatically 100%. Like, there's an understanding, like I said, we're both black. You understand me a little bit better than somebody else. But again, there's, especially on a you know politician standpoint, a certain level of success standpoint, there may be some doubt, some assumptions about whether somebody is superficial or not, or have your best intentions in mind. Um, so I think those things are just kind of ingrained within the culture, um, and may take some time and understanding to kind of work through to get to a more pure standpoint on that. The perception of black leaders within black communities or black culture in general. It's going to take some time.
Yes. It's going to take some time to pacify to
Yeah,
these
but I
issues.
don't want to pacify for these black leaders, but I do think it's helpful to understand the place that they're in, um, and why us as the black constituent may feel disconnected from them. So yeah.
Yeah. So I know we pressed for time and we got to keep moving forward. But I think we could talk to our fourth question that we have. Is democracy useful for black people, racial minorities, and people of color?
Yeah, I mean, I think in having this conversation up to this point, we've kind of touched on a lot of doubt within the political system, not only as it pertains to black people, but just, as a system as a whole. And you think about the place that Justin Pearson and his two contemporaries were in trying to go through the right channels with their protests and not being heard. They felt the need to resort to, I guess, something that
An unorthodox.
yeah, unorthodox method of protesting that involved the bullhorns and slapping the table that they were at.
Allegedly, I think they were standing on the tables.
Oh, the podium. I believe it was a podium.
Yeah.
I think they may have been allegedly on a table as well.
Those white people were terrified.
Um, you don't need to pacify. I mean,
No need to
keep
pacify.
forward. So, yeah, I mean, I think in trying to go through those traditional channels and not finding a lot of success, and there is a need to, like I said, get a little bit anti-democratic with it. As a minority, adhering to the democratic rules means that sometimes you may not be heard. Your goals and ambitions may not come to fruition. And if that is your reality, especially in a place where your opposition has maintained power for hundreds of years, that can get very frustrating. And I think that's something that we see in a lot of every state, obviously, with their own ideologies, but especially as it pertains to black issues, black culture, the South and red states, and especially as things like inequality and, I guess, racism have been more talked about cultural topics in the past, let's say, 3 to 5 years. Those things are a lot more prevalent, and it raises the question of what does a change truly look like from a political standpoint, a system standpoint, if the system that we have now and going through the correct channels is not garnering the outcome that we want. What will get that outcome? So yeah, I think the breaking of the social norms for me was very interesting to see. That was a start, but I'm wondering what that looks like moving forward. Everybody can't risk their job and get on that podium and pull their bullhorn out and cause a quote unquote a ruckus. So what does that look like within the structure we have now?
Well, I think the environment that they're in is more democratic. I mean, not democratic, but it's an actual democracy versus me being a regular citizen that just has the power to vote. For the citizen, it's more so like a democratic republic, obviously, where we vote for people to represent us. But for a person like Justin Pearson, the position that he's in is more of a democracy in the fact that he actually has to vote on policies that impact me.
If I may interject,
Yes.
I think, I guess prior to this incident, I'm not fully knowledgeable on Nashville law or how that House of Representative, legislature runs, but to my knowledge of Justin Pearson saying in the interview that at a certain point of him requesting to speak on the floor, the person presiding over the House told him to not stop requesting to speak, and at a certain point turned off his voting machine as well. So there was like I said, an anti-democratic suppression of him trying to serve in his role as a free leader.
Now what I will say, now that's just corruption. Now, but under true democracy, if he was given a chance to speak, I think everything being equal, I think it's fair.
Well, yeah, I agree, but I think that's the point. Is a lot of times it's not true democracy or free democracy, as you say. It's a little skewed. There's a little corruption in there. Like I said, a lot of these majorities, not just red but also blue, have been in place for, numerous years. It's kind of difficult for the minority to override those systems. So I guess the question is, if these things have been in place for so long, they're probably going to be in place, for the foreseeable future. How do we enact change from that minority standpoint if we're going through the right channels, if our leaders are going through the right channels and things still aren't changing?
Well, I think it's like two options. Option one they already used, which is to do something unorthodox to garner attention and support. To go off the, go against the grain.
Path,
Bring, what is called the amplification thing they use.
Oh, bullhorn.
Yeah, bullhorn. Bring a bullhorn in there and, gun reform. I don't know. Allegedly, that's what they said. But I don't know what they said. But that's one option. Or you just, when opposition arises and that you stated your piece, just from the standpoint of democracy itself, if you really think about it at its bare bones, it's like, okay, if it's 10 people in a room and, they voting on something, if 6 people voted on it against it, then that's true democracy, right? And that's where it gets dicey in a sense, especially when you're in a state that is more so Republican than anything. Especially in this case when they're actually trying to do reform of weapons and stuff like that. It's kind of hard to get that support behind you. So I think option 2 would just be to remain consistent, be calm, cool, and collect, and just know that your voice will be heard, but not like take a back seat and be like, I'll just write it out and see how. I think it's fair to make your thoughts and everything be known, like not to shy away from from what is being done. Like if they turn off my thing, whatever, I'm gonna be like, turn it back on. Turn back on my little button.
They're gonna say no.
So I could finish my statement or my whatever my piece is. But I think that's those are the two options. Obviously they expended option 1, and they saw that this was something that they could lose their jobs for, which is respectable.
Respectable,
yeah. And the fact that they're consistent on staying behind that, I respect. And I also respect when he said that if he was reinstated, that he would take his job back.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the marathon continues, Yeah. There's more work to be done, and I think he has a lot of insight and, passion about just the black community at large. Obviously, his, Nashville community, District 86. So I do believe he'll get back in there and make a lot of change, and it was really good to see him take a stand.
Yeah. But we must move on to our fifth question of today. So it reads: Black issues are socioeconomic issues, and then environmental racism. So, so in the on Breakfast Club, they mentioned Justin Pearson mentioned something about environmental racism, and I found that to be very interesting. Obviously, I want to play devil's advocate because what he's alluding to is things that would quote unquote disenfranchise um, um, people in poorer communities and things of that nature, which also tends to be people that are of
color.
not
Yeah, and I think when I think of environmental racism, I think of things like landfills being in poorer communities, um, things like pollution being a huge thing in urban communities, places that may have a larger population of people of color. Um, having a lot of jobs and work suppliers that kind of do work that endangers people, having a large majority of their workforce being people of color. Um, I think a lot of structural issues that are kind of out of the control of the people who live in a specific area is what I think of when I think of environmental racism, which I think is interesting when you try to dissect these issues, which leads us to the question of, are these black issues, are these socioeconomic issues, or are these environmental racism issues? I think there's a lot to unpack there.
yeah. We talked about this earlier. Um, I know where I stand on this particular issue per se. Um, because I do understand just economic factors that go into these when someone's deciding to put, let's say, a facility here that some type of business that may produce some type of waste, right? Some toxin or some pollutant in the air. I think it's a matter of, so if I'm a CEO and I'm looking to expand, I would like to expand in a place where I can get it for cheap, if you will. Just that's very simplistic. Like, I would like to get a place that's affordable, in a good location where I could get workers, so stuff of that nature, um, and I want to, word of the day, pacify to my needs as a CEO,
Okay.
as the leader of a company.
It's rational.
And I when a person is thinking like that, I don't think it's a matter of race, in a sense, and I don't think it's racist or quote unquote environmental racism. From just the definition alone, it's just being prejudiced, discriminated of someone of their color, and I don't think that's necessarily an environment. I don't think you can be racist to an environment, if that makes sense. But I see how someone would, you know, correlate those two things, because, like I said, usually, a person that would live in an environment that would be ideal for that CEO would be, black people, Hispanics, Hispanic, Latino.
Well, I agree, and I
Yeah.
think, I guess, framing it in this light may make it a bit clearer, at least for me. When you understand that dynamic of these, this property, this land is a whole lot cheaper than that land over there, and these people are willing to work for a whole lot less than these people over here, and these people may be willing to put up with conditions that these people over here may not be able to or want to put up with, and you consciously take advantage of that. In my eyes, I see that as some form of prejudice. It may not be explicit, but there's an understanding of the dynamics at work and a conscious decision to act on that for your own self-interest.
Mm.
I see some issue there. I don't think that's far-fetched.
I, the only because I can see it from that standpoint. I don't think, on like to, I think we give too much credit to racism.
I think some
There,
things are racism and should be called as racism.
it's because my thing
You're
is
pacifying the racist right now.
I'm not. Some things, yes, some things are racist,
Mhm.
right? But it's hard to. It's kind of like the what we talked about in our in episode 2. No, I'm sorry, episode 1 about Donald Trump and his allegations of paying hush money to Miss Daniels. I think it's kind of hard to. You could see correlation, like you can imply, you could have implications of what may have happened,
Mhm.
but I think in the same situation, it's kind of hard to like go into a CEO's head and be like, "You're doing this and you're racist." Like just because a person puts a business here, that does not garner them racist. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
The
I guess the racist term is kind of harsh,
Yeah,
but I do think there should be some acknowledgement of what is happening when you're doing things like that, like targeting specific areas due to the demographics that are there, due to the location, understanding the demographics that are there. Uh, Again, like I said, it's self-interested more so than community interested or people interested, which is not inherently bad, but when you see this kind of thing happen over and over again, and it's been happening for centuries, it's kind of nasty.
but I still don't think that garners something to be like to call a whole act racist, like that. It just I could see why someone would say that, but to be like technically correct, well, allegedly technically correct, I don't I don't think to just call a whole organization or a particular person racist for wanting to put a business or some type of thing that is toxic, if you will, in an environment that would, from from a logistical standpoint, make sense, right? It like when you getting into numbers and logistics, I don't. It's for obvious reasons they don't take into account the emotional side of it, right?
Mm.
And when they make a decision based off numbers and logistics, yes, it may look a certain way, but those same metrics is a metric that is used to understand like who are who's in this particular area based on other metrics, from history and all that type stuff. If you want to bring up redlining, I think Pearson mentioned that in the Breakfast Club about redlining and stuff that has nothing to do with, just staying on the analogy, has nothing to do with the CEO wanting to put, I don't know, some industrial type of thing in a community that's going to let off tons of carbon dioxide and harm the wildlife and the air quality. Those things have, I don't think a person in that position of CEO is thinking like, I want to put a business here because long ago they did redlining to make sure that these group of people are here. Therefore, I can put my business here. Now, if someone is thinking like that, then yes, I'll be like, bro, you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself and not be CEO anymore. But if he's not thinking like that, he's thinking from a standpoint to make sure that the business flourishes, grows, and do what they need to do ethically and in a way that saves the environment. I think that's a win-win for the business and for the community because it provides jobs and other things, you know.
Well, I think I have an example that kind of takes what you just said and paints it in a different light. I think when you, like I said, you understand the history, you understand the dynamics that you're existing in today, and you use that to your advantage, it looks away, right? So, for example, if there were a family that made their money off the exploitation of black people, and that money got passed down from generation to generation, and the current, I guess patriarch of that family owns that money, and they use that money to buy a black neighborhood, and they gentrify that to where black people can no longer live or exist in that neighborhood. They can't pay the rent cost, whatever that may be. That looks away, right?
Sure.
And especially more so because you understand that money was off the backs of black people, and I'm now using that to exploit black people some more. Now, again, when you're taking advantage of societal standards, demographics, stuff like that, it looks away. It may not be quote unquote racist, it may not be explicitly racist, but there's some undertone there. And I don't think it needs to be spoken. I think it's just understood that it is there. And I think you just have to, again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but you have to understand that as the person doing that. I don't think you can consciously look past that.
Well, okay, so you bring up the point of gentrification, and I think if you're in that, if a person finds themselves in a state of gentrification and they're having to move out, then yes, I think they will look at it differently. But looking at it in totality, okay, just for example, and we talked about this earlier, and it's like, so for example, everybody has a bedroom. You say 12 by 12, something standard or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And a person can decide whether they want to have their clothes all over the floor, or they could decide to have all their clothes in the hamper to give some order and some decency to their room. Now, what I'm about to say is going to sound like I'm putting a lot of pressure on people in these communities.
Definitely not pacifying to them. Sounds.
Yes. But what I'm saying is, in this state of gentrification, for example, like, people see opportunity in an environment that you do not see opportunity in. And I don't know.
I would rephrase that. People see opportunity in an environment that you do not have opportunity in. Totally different.
That's a very good point that you made.
Totally different.
But
nothing to say.
Okay, vision is key. Vision is key there. If a person does not have vision to make their environment better, or doesn't have the will to make their environment better, I can't put the blame on anyone else except the individual, because at some point a person has to say, okay, enough is enough, and I got to do something about my environment. So what that looks like, it's not going to happen instantly. If I have like 30 pairs of undergarment, pants, shirts, each on the floor, that's going to take some time to pick up and put in the hamper so they can be washed. Now that I look at that, take that same analogy because at a certain point, I don't think we need to, relating this to other questions we had during this episode. I think there comes a certain point where black people can't look to others to fix problems.
I know. I mean, I get that. I understand that. But I feel like the thing we talked about in pre-production with Jay-Z and Tidal versus what Apple Music does versus what Spotify does. Like, we're talking about black people with all the opportunity in the world, all the resources in the world, more than you and I can fathom right now. And they're still chasing things that have been established for years. And all their efforts of trying to upbuild black community, upbuild black artists, do all the things that we're preaching right now, still behind. And that's a reality for a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of people obviously without Jay-Z's resources. So you can imagine how much harder it is for them to try to curate spaces for black people to be cultivated and build within. So I think, you can't discount the circumstances that we exist in this world. We all can control what we can control, but there's some things that are totally out of our control. And we just have to understand that and try to navigate through that the best we can. But it's hard at times, It's not always going to be the outcome that we may hope to achieve, or it may be difficult and disappointing at times, but we keep going. Like you said, the vision is bigger, which I guess leads us to our final point and our rhetorical question for the day. We would love for you to answer this in the comments as well if you have some insight.
All the questions, please leave a comment. We want engagement here.
Definitely.
We want to hear all perspectives. Obviously, on this podcast, I hope we're portraying a good dialogue, and we're showing you how to have different perspectives, but also be respectful in how we present our arguments and
Definitely.
things of that nature. But the last question.
Yeah, I mean, in all this talk about black politicians, black representatives, black vision, black goals, I wonder personally, and I wonder collectively for the black community, what do we want? What is our utopian scenario? Do we want equality? Do we want equal opportunity? Do we want equal outcome? What is it that we covet so bad? And I don't even want to get into how do we get there. That's a whole nother conversation. But just what do we want as black people in this country, in this society?
Yeah. When we was coming up with this question, obviously it's inspired from the Justin Pearson conversation, interview with God, what's the name?
Breakfast Club.
Yeah, the Breakfast Club. My goodness, I'm sorry, Charlamagne. But like, so when we was watching their podcast, the Breakfast Club, and just getting that, just hearing all the different questions that Tez was asking Pearson, I was just wondering, like, year in and year out, we always hear, at least in the black community, these black people not doing enough, or we got to march here to get our justice. Which I'm not saying that justice isn't. I don't think nothing is 100% perfect or 100% where it needs to be, but I will say that improvement is something. Progression is something that we are always looking towards. However, I do want to get, as a unit, as a collective, I do want us to get to a place where, since we do live in America, and it's not just about us, but there is no America without us, and there's no America without white people. Look at that flip. There's no America without Asians. There's no America without Latinos. And the list continues. There's no America without Native Americans. But if my question is, and Chris brought it up, what is the utopian scenario? That means the perfect, ideal situation for black people. And just to answer the question from my standpoint, I believe that's us becoming more inclusive, if you will, to the general population. Just from statistics alone, it is shown that that more things get done when you're not when you're not thinking about yourself. And you think about, I know this might sound off topic, but when you think about the greatest teams of all time, the Bulls, the Lakers.
Selflessness. Yeah.
Yes, it's you see that they're about the team, they're about the objective of winning, and And when you get caught up in the I, and the I in this case, from my standpoint, is when you get caught up in, well, we got to do this for black people. We got to do that for black people. You could get caught up in that so much that you miss the bigger picture of what the utopian could look like. And when you take your eye off the prize of that, you're going to constantly beget the same questions of why this is not happening, why we're not seeing this change, and so forth. But until the day that we look past that, not dismiss it, but we see the bigger goal. Here in America, we have seen some great things come out of dark places. And I think as long as we keep our eye on the light and keep our eye on the prize of what we've built, even and this is why you have to realize that this is so powerful, because we have built what we built against the opposition. Like, when I mean opposition, I mean like the the racism of it all, the just everything that goes against
the societal factors at play, I guess.
Yeah, that goes against the success of when people come together to fixate on a goal that needs fixing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to branch off, when you think about, like I said, the utopian society, like you said, there's unity. And I think, there's a lot of preaching about black people unifying, black people coming together, but if there's no common goal, then one, there's a disconnect from various, parties of what are we coming together for, what are we trying to accomplish if we don't know what we're here for, right? And I think, that's very easy to understand when you look at something like the civil rights, movement, where there was a goal for liberation, a goal for representation, a seat at the table. And you saw that it was able to be accomplished and enacted in politics and law, which I think is very inspiring to me. It's very, promising. And, I think one thing that kind of helped that movement, gain traction and be as powerful as it was the strength of the black leader, the Martin Luther Kings of, that time, the Malcolm X's, the Huey Newtons, the strong black leaders who were able to clearly state the goal, even if they differed in opinion at times. They had maybe a different method to get there, but they had a common goal. And I think that is crucial to change, advancement. And we can, as Calvin said, maintain a universal goal for advancement of people as a whole, and at the same time desire an advancement of us as black people as well. So those things are not mutually exclusive at all. And I think it's useful when you can acknowledge the differences and the universalities that we all have within each other.
Chris, you bring up a imagery that I found as you were speaking. I found that to be very relatable to this whole thing, right? You hear about the Last Supper, and you see what that looks like. What does it look like to have a seat at the table, right? You picture it. You're at the table. There's food on it. You don't really. You might care who's sitting beside you, but what's the common goal is this food is about to get bussed down.
Yeah, there's community.
We're passing the plate. We're asking, hey, pass the salt, please. Cracking jokes, whatever that may look like. Just enjoying one another's company, and respecting one another's company, even respecting their elbow space, right? So when you look at that picture and you think about it, it's that's, to me at least, I think that's a utopian society. Being able to break bread, commune with one another, and it's not going to look pretty, because sometimes at that table you're going to have conversations that you need to have food over, right? Let me drape this down so I make sure.
Sometimes you're gonna want to put your fork down and pick your hands up, But that's the communal nature of it. Relationships are not always pretty; they're not always perfect, but that's why we're in them. We're in them to grow and to better ourselves and to overcome adversity in them. And I think that's something that's very applicable to this conversation. And again, I love the imagery of, the Last Supper, the communion, the community aspect of it, of people from different backgrounds, different creeds, different colors, different experiences, all coming together and enjoying a goal, a celebration of what has been accomplished, what has been done. And that's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah. But I think that'll do it for this episode, man. This has been a conversation I feel like is much needed. It's probably going to be a conversation that will never cease and never end.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately.
Oh, God. But I enjoyed the conversation. I think it was very beneficial. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on a lot of topics. I'm going to name this A Seat at the Table. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's going to be the title.
Mm.
Yeah. But you know how we must end the show. Have a TEV
Have
day.
a TEV day.
Have a TEV day.
Please don't have a TEV day.
Where we represent truth, entertainment, and value.
Thank you.